Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I'm going to start off this morning by showing you a little kalimba. It's also called a thumb harp. Now I have two of these. I've brought both of them in before, but I think once in a while it's nice to bring an instrument in that you may not be seeing very much of and explain it to you just so you get a chance to see it. Now this has a little bar across and two screws, and the screws hold all of these metal pieces in place, and you notice that they're jagged on the top. That's so that it'll play a scale on the bottom. So the way that you play it is you just use your thumb. I'm going to bring it close to me when I actually play the scale, but you can use both hands, you use both thumbs, and you just push them down. You kind of press it and hold it, and then just take and put your finger off from it. You don't hold it there. You have to take it off. So at any rate, I can hear it. I hope you can. And what you would do, of course, this is going to look backward to you. You would hold it, and you would take your thumbs, and I'm going to do this holding it up because I'm afraid you're not going to hear it if I don't hold it up. This is in the key of C. Now, when would you hear it? You know, when would it be loud enough for you to hear if you had it in an orchestra? The time that you would play it is if you're alone and you just want to play it, or just with a few friends and you just want to play it. But if you're in an orchestra, there's sometimes you'll see music and it'll be just for one solo instrument. Maybe it's just 4 or 5 notes, maybe it's just 2 notes or 1 note, but everybody stops and one instrument plays those notes. And then, of course, it would be mic'd. And it could give you quite a good effect if it's a certain type of music. It would just fit in a gap of 4 or 5 notes, and you could play it. Now, you can change it. I'm playing it in the key of C, but I can change it to the key of G just by changing some of the little metal pieces in a little different position, and just screw it tight enough with the 2 screws. There's one here and there's one here. You get a full scale out of it. You can get 2 or 3 scales out of it. All you have to do is be able to adjust those little metal pieces, and it gives a nice little tone. It's not going to be very loud, but it can give you a nice little tone. Now I have a more modern one. It looks about the same way. You know, it's designed the same, and it sounds the same. It doesn't seem to lose its ability to create sound with age, because the one that I have that I didn't bring with me is a lot younger than this one. But they act the same, they sound the same, they haven't lost the way that they vibrate due to age, and so it goes. So I'm going to play it once more. If you can watch my thumbs. That's a full scale right there. So that's the little kalimba. As I go along, I sometimes like to bring in instruments that you wouldn't see very much of. So I'm still working with you in terms of timing, and I want to do a little review on this chart in terms of what the timing is for different songs, and then I'm going to be playing songs, some which I've written, most in which I've written, and you'll be able to see the music and follow along. So with this chart right here, I'm focusing on what one beat is. Okay, so a quarter note is 1 beat. If you split it in half, it would be 2 eighth notes. Now an eighth note is like this here. It has a little stem on it, and it has this little flag. You can draw it in any direction you want to, but it has that flag. If you have 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever together, that line that goes across acts as a flag for both of them. So here's a quarter, split in half, and you have 2 eighth notes. Well, then what's a dotted quarter? A dotted quarter is equal to 3 eighth notes, because a dot gives a note half the value of what the original note was. And so the original note was a quarter. Half of that is the eighth. So you add another eighth to it. A dotted quarter is equivalent to 3/8 notes. And here they're all eighth notes because that one flag going across acts as a flag for all of them. And a dotted quarter and an eighth is usually not written like this. Usually it's written like this: dotted quarter and eighth. I put that bracket on just so that you can understand that these two notes are usually seen together, dotted eighth. And how do you count it? Well, you start counting 2, but since it is just the beginning of 2, since it's an eighth note, you would say 1, 2, and that would be the equivalent of 2 beats. 1, 2, and. Or if it's in the middle of a measure, it might be 3, 4, and. 1, 2, and, 3, 4, and, 5, 6, and, or whatever. But that's how it is. You start to count the next beat, but you stop quick because half of it is over here, and this is the rest of it. Altogether, this is going to be the equivalent of 2 beats. Now, so you don't count it exactly like that, but that's what it is. Now, if you had all of that as eighth notes, you would have 1 and 2 and. That's the same as 2 quarters. And you split both quarters in half, so you have 2/8 for one quarter, 2/8 for another quarter. So together they make 2 beats, 1 and 2 and. These 3 would be the dotted quarter, if it would be the same as this, 1 and 2 and, or 1, 2 and. That's the way you count it. Now, if you take an eighth note and you split it in half, you get 2/16 note. Now, a dotted eighth is the same as 3/16. How does that happen? Well, you have your eighth note, you split it in half, and that gives you 2/16. You add that dot, it gives you another 16th because it's half again the value of what the original note was. So the original note was an eighth note. You split it in half and you get 2/8. You add that dot to it and it becomes a 3/8. So what's your a 3/16? 2/16 for an eighth, and you add the quarter, it gives you the 3/16. Okay, so here's 1/8 note, split it in half, you get 2/16 like this, add a dot to it, and you get 3/16. And of course, 4/16 is a beat. So here's 1 beat. So here's your dotted eighth, and that's equivalent to 3/16. You have 1/16 left over. And so that 4/16, if it's added, will make a full beat. I hope this makes some sense to you. It is a little hard to understand. Usually you see it written, a dotted eighth and 16th is usually written like that, and it's equivalent to 1 beat. Now you can reverse it and have it written like this with the 16th first and the dotted eighth afterwards. You can do that too, and it's the same thing. It's 1 beat, okay? So, and then here you have this, the triplets. Triplets are always 1 beat, 3 notes to 1 beat. And I just have it written. Usually you have it written as eighth notes, like you don't have to, but that's usually the way it's done. And then you put a little 3. A 3 up here, a 3 down there. Sometimes you put a little like a hold on it, plus a 3. It means the same thing, and that's 1 beat each. 3 notes to 1 beat. So when you're talking about 1 beat, you could be talking about a quarter. With any line, I didn't put this in, but if I think of it, I will maybe next time. If you have a key signature, and well, I'll show it to you here for the first song that we're going to play. Let me just show you this. Here's 3, and that's 4. Whenever you get a 4 at the bottom of a time signature, that indicates that a quarter note gets 1 beat. And for most music, that's exactly what it is. For most music, a quarter gets 1 beat. So here's 1 beat, and here's 1 beat. This is in 3/4 time. That means there are 3 beats to the measure, and the quarter note gets 1 beat. So 1, 2, and I've only got 2 beats in that measure, but that's like an introduction. I put a hold over each one, so you hold that a little longer than you would for a regular quarter note. How long do you hold it? As long as you want. I mean, there's no set pattern, but you probably don't want to hold it too long. It makes for the introduction, and then I've got 3 beats down here. This is only 2 beats. This would be the 3rd beat, but I have added 2 rests there, so this is a total measure. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you play this. You add it to the other. That's a hold on it. So you play that, but you don't tongue it. It's like you're holding this note for 2 beats more. So let me go over this once again, so you'll get kind of a feeling for what it is. I think timing is one of the most difficult things to teach because it's mathematical. And I know I'm not good at math at all, and a lot of people aren't. But math in music kind of makes sense when you learn it, because it does make sense when you figure it out. I remember taking statistics course. I had to have a 2 or 3 statistics course for every degree that I got when I was in college. And the first time I had it, and I'm not that good at math, it was fascinating to me. I actually liked the class, but to figure it out on my own was kind of hard. And then finally my professor said to me, "Pat, don't even worry about it. Think of it as logic. Statistics is logic. Don't think of it as mathematical computations. Just think of it as logic. And then it'll make a lot more sense." And it did. So if you think of this as logic, you have a quarter. That quarter is usually 1 beat, and it's going to be in the songs that we play. You split it in half, you get 2/8. Well, an eighth is a half a quarter. The other eighth is half a quarter. 2 halves make that whole quarter. If you get a dotted quarter, then you actually get 3/8, because this can be split into 2/8, and then that dot adds another eighth because it is half of what that note would be worth. So it ends up that you get 3/8. And if you write it down, a dotted quarter in an eighth, and that's very common to write in music, that's the dotted quarter and that's the eighth. It's the same as these 3/8 plus another eighth added to it. And of course, if you had 4/8, you get 2 beats. So this is like a 2-beat thing. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and however you count that. Then if you take an eighth and you split it in half, you're going to get 2/16. Add a quarter to a 16th, and you're going to get 3/16, because the eighth, if you split it, is already 2/16. And since a dot is a half of what the note is worth, you're going to get 3/16. And then 1 other 16th added to that is going to give you 4/16, and 4/16 is going to be a beat. So your dotted eighth, 3/16, a 4/16, and you get the 4/16, which gives you a beat. And it's usually written the dotted eighth and the 16th right here. The 3 of the 16ths, and then that other 16th left over, that's 1 whole beat. If you reverse it, then you can write it the other way, but it's still 1 beat. And then when you get to the triplets, 3 notes to a beat, 3 notes to a beat. And I've just got a group of notes down here. It doesn't, just to show you that it doesn't mean anything specifically. 2/8, 3/8, this would be a triplet, a dotted eighth and 16th, 1 beat, 4/16 would be 1 beat, a dotted quarter and an eighth, 2 beats. So I hope this starts to make some sense. Now, I'm going to do reviewing with you every so often. It's not that you don't understand. And if you play it, when you start to play it, all of a sudden it kind of gels for you. So what we have done, I'm going to put this to one side. what we have done over the past few weeks, I've talked to you about the differences between notes like thirds, fourths, fifths, where there's a space between them and what they sound like. And we've gone into various timing signatures and various ways of writing rhythms, which we have done. In fact, that's what we did so far today. And then you can put them all together and you can make music. This piece that I want to play first, I wrote this yesterday. I was looking up somebody's phone number. I tell you how music comes to me. I was looking up somebody's phone number. I wasn't able to find it for a while until I went on my tablet and found it that way. And just as I'm looking through, I'm thinking, what is his number? What is his number? Where did I write the number? All of a sudden a song comes to me. The whole thing, it just came to me. If you ever have a song come to you, and you say, oh, gee, I don't think I know that song. Maybe it's something you heard in the past, but maybe it's something that your mind is creating for you. A lot of times things come to you when you're thinking about something else. That's the way some people get very creative. They do something else and then something comes to them. And so what I did was I stopped looking for the number. I sat down, grabbed some music paper, and wrote it down. Well, why did I do that? Because if I didn't, once the song left me, and it would eventually, I couldn't get it back. If you don't write it down, when you hear it in your head, don't worry about wrong notes or keys or signatures or anything like that. Just write down what you hear in your head, and then you may have a song. That's how I got this song. And it's not too hard a song to play. So I've already gone over a little bit with you. Here's your key signature is 1 sharp. 1 sharp is the key of G. And then it's 3/4 time. That's the time signature. That means there are 3 beats to the measure, and the quarter note gets 1 beat. So it would be 2, 3. If you're counting this, and you need to kind of count it in your head as you're playing. You can't count out loud because you've got an instrument in your mouth. But 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And you play that. It's attached to that because of this hold. This tie, it's also called a tie, and you just continue to play it. You don't tongue it, so it's as if this is one note. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, but you do tongue this one. That's not involved in that tie. So you tongue that, and then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The same thing happens here. This is a whole note, and a whole note is 3 beats. How do I know that? Because there are 3 beats in the measure. And if there are 3 beats in the measure, and there's only 1 note in the measure, and it would have to be a whole note, then that's worth whatever the time signature says. So this is worth 3 beats. And then I've tied that to this note here, which is not tongued. It's the same note, but if I didn't have this hold on it, then you would tongue that note. But because I have a hold on it, a tie on it, you just kind of count that, but you play it. You don't tongue it. You just play it right along with this note here. And I've done that several times throughout this piece. So this is more or less an exercise in how you hold your note and you tongue it. Now this here you tongue. This is like a scale. And then I repeat that scale with a little bit of a scale here and a little bit of a scale here. So I haven't put down any time signature in terms of how fast I want it. I haven't put a tempo on it, is what I'm saying. So it can be whatever you want it to be. But I think that when you start practicing anything, you shouldn't go too fast, because if you do, you're going to get mixed up, especially if you're sight reading it. So I'm going to hold this note longer and this note longer, and then start with the regular speed on this note. Now, if I wanted to, I could put a quarter note equals 60 or something like that. That would say that it would be like 60 beats, and you would be having 1 beat if that's 60. I could time it that way, but I didn't do that. So let me play that, and you can look at the music, and we'll kind of dissect it afterwards. Now that's the whole song. It's not very fast. I didn't play it very fast, but there's almost, let me point out, when I get here, let's see, when I get here to this scale, I've held this whole note with this note, so this starts like a whole new phrase kind of thing, even though it's in the same measure. And I tongue all of the notes, and then when I get down here, I have one note, and then I play this, which is a half note, so that's worth 2 beats, and I hold it to this half note, which is also 2 beats. So it's held like for 4 beats, even though they are 2 separate notes. You hold it like 4 beats, but you tongue that, and then you go through this. Here's another whole note worth 3 beats. I could have, if I'd wanted to, and sometimes I do, but I didn't do it this time, I could have made that a half note with a dot. A half note with a dot is also worth 3 beats. I could have, if I'd wanted to, put 3 quarter notes in like this and put a tie on them, and that would have been also worth 3 beats. But I didn't do any of those things. There are various ways that you can write music. It wouldn't make much sense to do that, but I could have done that. Now this I held a little longer than I wrote it. These are 2 rest ones, so it's 1, 2, 3. I could have put a hold on it, and then I could have made sure that that was held a little longer. I could have put a retard on this, and that would make sure that it slows down at the end. Sometimes you don't always mark everything. You can kind of get a sense of what it is. So I'm going to play it again, and this is actually a natural. Most of the notes here that are Fs are sharp. But so I put a sharp in the signature. That puts it, as I said before, in the key of G. I do a lot of songs in the key of G when I'm writing, and there's a reason for that. With the key of G, a lot of times the lowest note is going to be a D. It'll be a D, which is 6 fingers down and holding it. But I think that it's important to remember that some people, due to hand problems, or if they have arthritis or something like that, they can't use, or it's very difficult for them to use the lowest finger that they have. You have to stretch it so much. So let me try this again. Now, what if you wanted to play it faster? You could play it faster. It wouldn't be a problem. So I'll play it faster. Once you get to play it, the way to practice it is you play one measure, then you play another measure, then you play another measure, and then you play all of those measures together. Then you play another measure and another measure, and then you play all of them together. But this is a relatively simple song. It's E, F, G, F, G, C, B, A, G, E, F, E, F. It's not really a hard thing to play. So if you look on the music as I play it, I am going to play it a little faster. See if you can follow it. Then I've got to close because I've only got 3 minutes left. Now what I did on my part, I didn't write it down here, but I did put a retard. Sometimes you can put a retard on the music close to the end. It slows it down, and it's obvious that's the end of the piece. So this could be like a little dance song, you know? It could be like a little dance song. It has intervals of 2 and 3 with just playing quarter notes, whole notes, half notes, and holes here and there, and it makes just a nice little song. Well, I have run out of time, so I'm going to close it here. Please join me next time, and we'll continue with this.